Okay, we are live. Can someone say something? I just want to make sure I don't have an echo or interference.
So exciting to be live.
Yeah, it sounds like
Hello.
fun.
Okay, I think we're good to go on that.
Yay. Okay, we have 100 people in the waiting room. Wonderful. So also, I didn't say this before, but we'll do a round of introductions for everyone presenting at the start. So I'll kick it off, pass it to somebody, and then y'all pass it to the next person.
Or is it just Amber, Emily, Veronica, Steph presenting?
And Mary.
And Mary. Perfect.
Mary came in to save the day on the Senate hearing stuff because I was like, I don't know what's going on. I haven't even read it yet.
Okay, do we want to go ahead and start admitting everyone? Is that okay?
Let's do it. Hi, everyone. Welcome. We are just going to give it a minute or two as people are joining the waiting room. But if you'd like to go ahead and drop in the chat your name, where you're calling in from, that would be great, just so we have an idea of all the cities that people are representing today. Perfect. Looks like we have Austin, Killeen, Spring, Fort Worth, Houston. Okay, yeah, this is looking great. We have people from almost every corner of the state, it's looking like so far. El Paso, great. Yeah. Okay, we'll give it just one more minute and then we're going to go ahead and dive in because we do have a lot to cover today. But we're so excited that you're spending your Tuesday with us. We know there is so much going on, but here to help try to break down all the information we can and get everyone ready to take action. Okay. If you are joining, please keep dropping in your name, where you're calling in from across the state. We're so excited to have you. I'm Amber Mills. I'm I'm not from Austin. I'm from East Texas, small little town, probably where they're trying to draw the maps to from Austin at this point in time. But I am currently based in Austin. I am with the organization Move Texas. And yeah, just I hate that this is the circumstances we're here under, but I am excited to share space with y'all and to dive into all this information. We are going to try to make it as quick and accessible as we can, although we understand it is a lot to undergo in a 30-day process. So it's even more so a task to try to understand it in a hour and 30-minute presentation. But we will do our best. So we're gonna cover the redistricting fundamentals, kind of the context of why we're doing this in 2025 suddenly, as well as how you can take action because there are so many things being scheduled over the next week, especially. But for the month, really, we're looking at a lot of actions and a lot of just community input that we're needing y'all to help with. So I'm very excited, but I'm going to go ahead and pass it to our co-hosts to introduce themselves. I'll start with Veronica Worms.
Hi, friends. My name is Veronica Worms. I'm the voting rights policy attorney at the Texas Civil Rights Project based in Austin. And I'm so excited to be here with all of you this evening. And I will pass it to Steph.
Hey everyone, I'm Stephanie Swanson. I'm a leader in the Fair Maps Texas Coalition. If you guys are signed up for newsletters, I'm the one that sends out the newsletters and tries to keep folks updated. Nice to meet everyone, and I'm so excited that there are now 217 people here on a Tuesday night wanting to know more about what's going on and hopefully speak up. So thanks for being here. Okay, I'm going to turn it over to Emily.
Hi, y'all. I'm Emily Evie French. I'm the policy director at Common Cause Texas. I use she, her pronouns. I'm based out of Austin now, but I was born in Houston and raised in Wichita Falls. So I've, been all up and down like that I-35, I-44. I'm going to pass it to Nikki.
Thanks, Emily. Hi, everyone. Again, thanks for being here on a Tuesday night. I'm Gage, Texas. I'm the policy manager there, and I'm actually based in Houston. And I will pass it to Mary.
Hi everyone. My name's Mary Baca. I am a voting rights strategist with the ACLU of Texas, and I'm based in Austin. And very excited that so many people are here. And excited to.
Perfect. Okay, so that's it. You're going to hear from a lot of us today because, like we said, there's so much information. We needed everyone's hands on deck to break it down. But gonna go ahead and, oops, went too far. Gonna go ahead and pass it to Steph to give you a little bit of an overview of the organizations that do make up the Fair Maps Coalition. So passing it to you, Steph.
Really, take two.
Perfect. I should be able to.
I'm gonna go ahead and mute everyone. Okay, so the Fair Maps Texas Coalition started way back in 2017. We got together some of the good government groups. So originally we had the League of Women Voters of Texas, Clean Elections Texas, Common Cause Texas, and a few others in there. And then I believe the following year or a few months later, we started growing the coalition space, and we added the ACLU of Texas, the Texas Civil Rights Project, and some other local community organizations in there as well. We are continuing to grow that space. So if you have a nonpartisan group that you would like to add to the coalition space, please reach out to us. I'll drop our email in the chat. It's just fairmapstexas@gmail.com. But we'd love to have more people sitting around the table. Tonight, we also have two other organizations helping us out. We have Nikki from Engage, is it Engage USA or Engage Texas?
I guess both. I'm from the Texas chapter.
And then we also have Move Texas joining us, who have been a longtime partner and friend of ours. They're the ones that so kindly organized all of this very quickly, put everything together for us tonight. So thanks so much, you guys, for doing that.
Of course. Okay, thanks for going over that. If you're just now joining, because we know a bunch of people are hopping on, we are asking that you put your name as well as your location in the chat, just so we know where people are calling in from. The presentation today is really just going to cover the basics of redistricting, what led us here, why we're doing it now, and why it matters. If you are drawing on the board, please stop. Try to turn off the annotations. I will keep I will keep an eye on that and erase them, but just know that was not me. As well as just like alternative solutions to what is happening right now and what we are fighting for. And then lastly, how you can take action, whether that be in person at the Capitol, in your community, or from home. And so with that, I'm going to go ahead and just like we had said, like we're going to get into this a little bit later at the end as far as like what are the actual concrete actions to take. But just from the top, we wanted to let you know that there are key hearings that have already been scheduled by the Texas legislature as soon as this Thursday. So starting with 3 hearings on the House side, we have Austin on Thursday, Houston on Saturday, and then DFW in Arlington on Monday. We'll get into this a little bit later, but these are going to be actual opportunities to go in person and testify in front of the redistricting committee. Then on the Senate side, this was announced just today on I think the date's wrong there, but on Friday, there is a hearing. These are all going to be virtual, but then there's basically it's Friday all the way to Monday, also spanning regions of the state, the way they're trying to divide it up. But we will get more into logistics on those as well. Just noting that registration is going to close 12 hours before the start. So that means for the Friday hearing, you got to be registered by Thursday. So now I'm going to go ahead and pass it to Veronica to get us into really the meat of the presentation.
All right. Okay, friends. So we're going to do a deep dive into redistricting fundamentals. And for the first part, we need some shared vocabulary that you will be hearing a lot in the redistricting space. So the first term is cracking, which refers to breaking up communities, generally communities of color, to dilute their political power in a district. There's also packing, which is drawing lines to intentionally put communities in one district to limit how much influence they have in other districts. There's also communities of interest, which are groups of people with shared concerns, interests, and characteristics. And this does include racial and ethnic groups. And finally, we have coalition district. And this is a district that is drawn to include multiple minority communities of interest that do not have the numbers to vote in candidates of each group's choice on their own, but that vote in coalition to elect the same candidate of choice. And if we can go to the next slide, we have a little bit of an illustration of what this can look like. Yeah, so just to visualize it, so packing can take the same distribution of folks and pack them in together. Cracking puts them apart so their political power is diluted. Just to put this into a little bit more context, you can be a person of color that is represented by a Democrat currently, and they could pack you into or crack you so that you are no longer within the district that represents your community's interests, and pack you into a majority white district with a incumbent that may not represent your interests. And that's how that can look like in real life, the practical effect of these types of terms. Next slide. Okay, so we're also going to go into a little bit more vocabulary on the types of gerrymandering and claims. So the first is racial gerrymandering, which is the claim that race predominated in the legislature's consideration when drawing a district map. There was a recent Supreme Court case, Alexander v. South Carolina NAACP, that found that racial gerrymandering to prevail on that claim instead of partisan gerrymandering, which I'll talk about in just one second, you have to have an alternative map that basically shows that you could achieve the exact same partisan outcome, so the exact same partisan split of the vote, while giving more representation to racial and ethnic minority groups, which is a very hard standard to meet. Next thing that we have is partisan gerrymandering, which are maps drawn solely for partisan advantage. And in a case from about 6 years ago, Russo v. Common Cause, the Supreme Court ruled that partisan gerrymandering is a non-justiciable political question. What that essentially means is that the courts can't intervene in partisan gerrymandering claims unless it's really, 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 really egregious. Theoretically, maybe they could, but for all intents and purposes, partisan gerrymandering has been ruled something that the federal courts cannot help us with. So the political branches must deal with any malfeasance within the political branches. It's very helpful. Next, we have vote dilution, which is we have vote dilution, which is a claim under Section 2 of the VRA, which protects equal access to elections, that the redistricting reduced the opportunity of voters of color to elect the candidate of their choice compared to the majority group's voters. So essentially, they diluted the vote, diluted the voting strength of racial and ethnic minorities compared to the majority group's members in a district. Finally, we've got intentional discrimination, which is when a government actor intentionally discriminated against a minority group when enacting a law or map such that it violates the US Constitution's Equal Protection Clause, 14th Amendment. Next slide. Okay, so background, why are we here? Great question. So every 10 years after the US census is held, Texas has to, both under the federal and under the state constitution, redraw its maps to take into account population growth and population redistribution in the state. And that's not inherently a bad thing, right? Like our population changes, we need to take into account shifting population demographics in order to properly represent the state. But in 2020, the US Census results were delayed partially due to the pandemic and an unsuccessful attempt to add a citizenship question to the census question list. Due to our population growth, Texas was due to gain 2 congressional districts in the 2021 redistricting cycle. Next slide. Okay, so when those census results came back, it reflected that people of color made up a vast majority of the population growth that Texas experienced during this time. 95% of Texas population growth was due to people of color. And so one might expect that that would be reflected in the congressional redistricting. Next slide, please. So this just gives you a little bit more of a graphic representation of what those number breakdowns look like. The greatest increase by just bare numbers was among the Hispanic community, but there were huge gains in both the Black and Asian American communities as well. Next. Okay, so despite this immense growth in communities of color across the state, the legislature drew maps that deprived many individuals of color the opportunity to elect candidates of their choice. So in 2021, civil rights groups and the Department of Justice brought lawsuits to invalidate the maps under Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act on the ground that they impermissibly drew maps that deprived communities of color fair representation. And some groups also brought claims of intentional discrimination and racial gerrymandering in violation of the 14th Amendment as well. Now, Texas's claims in this litigation were that it drew the maps race blind, and that has been their claim throughout these lawsuits. Next slide, please. Okay, so why are we here? In 2025, March of this year, the DOJ under the current administration withdrew its claims in the current Texas redistricting lawsuit. Then around June 9th, Trump officials began to push for Texas lawmakers to redraw the congressional districts. On July 7th, the DOJ sent a letter to state leadership claiming that because coalition districts are not protected after Petaway, which is a case that I'll get into in just one second, 3 existing Black Latino coalition congressional districts and 1 majority Latino district are considered unconstitutional racial gerrymanders. Now, Petaway was a Fifth Circuit case. We are in the Fifth Circuit. It's one of the federal circuits that district courts appeal to. And they decided that they overruled a longstanding precedent that had allowed coalition districts. So when more than one minority group votes together as a block in order to elect the candidates of their choice, they decided that that precedent was no longer required by the Voting Rights Act. So that's what that case was. Then on July 9th, the governor called a special session in light of the constitutional concerns that were raised in that July 7th DOJ letter. Next slide, please. Okay, so just to reiterate something that I said, coalition districts are not illegal under the VRA. That is not the law. That is not the truth. They are simply not required under the VRA in the Fifth Circuit. That's what the Fifth Circuit decided. Now, the Fair Maps Coalition, in response to this letter and in response to this mid-decade redistricting, has sent state leaders in a letter outlining that the state cannot have it both ways. What I mean by that is they cannot redraw maps for impermissible racial considerations while simultaneously claiming that the maps were drawn race blind. That is a flat out contradiction. There is also no other legal reason to do a mid-decade redistricting. It's unjust and improper to redraw the maps while there is ongoing litigation to determine whether those maps violated federal law. And that's one of the key issues that we're facing right now. Moreover, rushing through this process in 30 days without regional hearings and using 2020 data, which is inherently going to be at least 5 years out of date, will not result in fair maps with proper consideration for community interests. Next slide. Okay, so what were the congressional districts that were identified in the DOJ letter? As I said, there were 3 majority Latino Black districts and 1 majority Latino district that were identified in the DOJ letter as potentially being racial gerrymandering. To be clear, the Fair Maps Coalition does not necessarily think that these maps are the best representation for Texans, but they are coalition districts. Many of them are historical, including CD 18, which was Barbara Jordan's district. And they do allow coalitions of color to elect the candidate of their choice. They are also all represented or were represented by individuals of color. So next slide. Also under consideration, there were some districts that were mentioned by Trump when he was discussing the redistricting on July 15th, which are mainly in the Valley, in the DFW area, and in the South Texas area, identified as other places where they are looking to gain seats. Okay, so some key takeaways from all of the stuff that I was throwing at you just now. That this mid-decade redistricting is unjust and it's out of order, but it continues our state's unfortunate history of trying to disempower the voices of communities of color. And the pretext for this redistricting outlined in the DOJ's letter is based on an inaccurate and misleading reading of the law, and it shouldn't be encouraged. Redistricting now is particularly improper when there is pending litigation regarding the legality of the current maps, right? A federal court still has yet to evaluate that for their legality. So particularly improper in that case. And the state is trying to have it both ways by laundering racial gerrymandering under the guise of partisan gerrymandering. And we have to make that clear to them on the public record. And with that, I will turn it over to my colleague Steph to go over the Fair Maps Coalition.
Just going to add in a few slides and talking points for you guys to consider. So Texas has a very long history of racial discrimination, especially when it comes to redistricting. They have either violated the Voting Rights Act or intentionally discriminated against voters of color for every decade for the past 50 years, basically since the Voting Rights Act was passed. In fact, Texas had such a horrible history of voter discrimination in the 1970s that Thurgood Marshall actually called them the state a tenacious defender of voting discrimination. Okay, next slide. So I want you to think about what our current districts look like right now. They're pretty egregiously gerrymandered. Importantly, what Veronica had just mentioned, they have packed and cracked communities of color to diminish their voices statewide. So when you look at the overall population of the state, 60.2% of the people are people of color, yet only 35%, actually 34.2% of our congressional delegation are people of color. That skew that you're seeing is because of the way the maps have been drawn. So I like to say they're racially gerrymandered. That might be too much of a legal interpretation though. So they definitely have a skew. Communities of color are definitely being shortchanged in representation for sure. The makeup of Texas's congressional delegation does not reflect the diversity of our state. I just went over that fact, but if you need that for testimony, it's there. And then importantly, this is not a fight about political parties. It is a fight about political power and who gets to wield it. Okay, next slide. Gerrymandering actually causes problems for everyone that might not be so apparent. I know that folks have a really hard time understanding why, what the effects of gerrymandering are and why you should care about it. So we kind of broke it down for folks a little bit for you guys to think about. So what the legislature is doing right now is they're drawing an overwhelmingly overwhelmingly large proportion of safe districts. A safe district means that they have an electoral margin of greater than 15%. So when a candidate runs there, basically they already know what party is going to win that district. When you draw a safe district, the election is moved from the general election to the primary. And when that happens, there's no more compromising across party lines. And what you see is your policies end up going more to the extreme factions because that's generally who shows up in the primaries. And that is particularly true in the Republican primary here in Texas. Our primaries and our state policies in the state are way out of line with what a majority of Texans want and see. Gun control is a great example of this. The majority of the state wants some sort of gun control. But that is not currently what Texas legislators have upheld. And I think, Nikki, I just stole one of your talking points from your future slides. So I'll let Nikki get into the details of that a little more. Importantly, we can't hold our legislators accountable right now, right? If we want to vote them out, we actually have to go to the primaries to vote them out because their district is so safe. Another problem that gerrymandering causes for our state is that incumbents get reelected over and over and over again. It then becomes hard to find a challenger. Those races go uncontested, and that leaves voters no choice at the ballot box, right? Why show up to vote if there's only one person running in that district? You already know who's going to win. So that kind of contributes to our voter apathy in our state and leads to low voter participation and turnout. But the reduced importance of the general election unfairly diminishes the ability of ordinary citizens to elect representatives of their choice, making it less likely that the problems of ordinary working people, that the problems they really care about will be addressed. Problems such as affordable housing, fair wages, better access to quality public education, and healthcare. Okay, all right, next slide. Nikki, I think you're going to jump in here, right?
Yes, thanks, Steph. So taking a step back as well to reflect on what Veronica and Steph talked about, redistricting sounds, it's very technical. It's maybe a little bit boring to a lot of people. Not to everyone here, I presume, because you're spending the evening with us. But why does it actually matter? Like, do we only care about redistricting because we want to see faces that look like ours in the legislature and Congress? And of course, that's important, but it's not just that. There are actual policy impacts and differences in the way congressional delegations, state legislatures, etc., vote based on how their districts are drawn. And right now, for a long time, because Texas has this pattern of racial gerrymandering, there's a disconnect between how the majority of voters in Texas feel, what they want, and the policies that impact their daily lives, and what our legislators who are supposed to represent us do. We're doing this in late July. As the month started on the 4th of July, I think most people have heard that Congress passed and President Trump signed the so-called Big Beautiful Bill. It's actually just like a tax cut bill, so I'm going to call it that. That legislation was very, very unpopular, and the overwhelming majority of Texas representatives voted for it, including when you look at who voted in Texas, you see a lot of the representatives of color did not vote for it, and a lot of the white representatives did vote for it. So again, we see not to be overbearing on the racial point, but we see the split along racial lines. This legislation is truly historic in that it's the largest transfer of wealth from those in the lowest parts of the income distribution to those in the upper echelons of income distribution since Reconstruction. Its effects can't be overstated. Just in Texas, about 400,000 people are going to lose healthcare coverage because of the impact on healthcare programs. 1.5 million Texans will have increased healthcare costs because of the changes to supplemental nutritional assistance programs. About 700,000 Texans could be knocked off those programs, even if they, qualify. The paperwork requirements they're adding are going to make it more difficult to stay on the programs. And if they are staying, they might have their benefits slashed. When you look at the 20% of US households who have the least, the bill takes about $1,000 from them and redistributes it to the households that are the richest. They will get about $300,000 a year in tax breaks that they really don't need. And there's a study that was done by Yale and the University of Pennsylvania. An additional, beyond the number of people who already died due to the impacts of poverty, it's estimated that this bill will cause 51,000 people to die each year once it takes effect that otherwise would not have died. And on top of all of that, we know that we have mixed feelings on immigration in Texas as a whole, as an electorate, but a lot of people are opposed to the way that immigration rates are being done right now. It's by no means a majority support issue, but this bill anyway invests $150 billion to have more mass ICE agents raiding immigrant communities, tearing apart families, and the amount of investment in ICE is going to make ICE larger than the militaries of many other countries. That is the extent of the investment in immigration enforcement. I think it's also worth pointing out that those districts Veronica talked about, one of the districts in Texas that actually has the most people who rely on SNAP, who are signed up for it, is Congressional District 18, which currently has no representative and is on the list, is on the DOJ letter to be targeted. Similarly, another district with a lot of people who use SNAP and who are now at risk of being taken off is the Congressional District 29, which is a Hispanic Opportunity District. It's something that the community fought for, and it's also in the DOJ letter. Next slide, please. And this is not anything new that we're just seeing with the tax cut bill. The impacts of redistricting and racial gerrymandering have been reverberating throughout Texas for a while. Even just going back a few years, a lot of the Texas delegation, both in Congress and also when you think about our elected officials across the state, they were not only helping push the narrative, they were leading it. Our Attorney General here was a leader in the narrative that Trump actually won the 2020 election. There was massive fraud done, and we need to go do reviews, do audits, and overturn the election results. The House of Representatives delegation out of it, there are still 16 people sitting in Congress voting on our laws who promoted this disinformation, these election conspiracy theories, election denialism. And it is, again, like there are, of course, people in Texas who support it, but it was by no means a majority support issue, although we don't see that reflected in our congressional delegation. And what's even worse is it gets tied back to conspiracies around race again. The narrative that ended up being pushed was that not only was the election stolen, but it was stolen because, at least partly, there were people who were not supposed to be voting, and those people who weren't supposed to be voting were people of color. And this narrative was used to further a push for more election and voting suppression and to justify doing things like last year raiding organizations that help register minority voters to vote. So all these narratives are tied together. Next slide, please. I want to end with a couple of slides showing just like polling from the Texas Politics Project, because sometimes it's just better to see the numbers. We just saw in the Big Beautiful Bill that I said I wouldn't call it that. We just saw in the tax bill that healthcare is going to be impacted. In Texas, on both the congressional and, of course, state level, our governors repeatedly refused to expand Medicaid eligibility, even though Texas voters as a whole want better access to healthcare and health insurance, and the numbers show this. I know it's a little bit hard to read, but the vast majority of voters, at the very least, they somewhat support expanding eligibility for Medicaid, and that's not a new number. It's kind of been a trend going back to when polling was done a couple of years ago. If you add those two together, it comes out to over 73% who want Medicaid expanded. And of course, we don't have that. And going back to what Steph referenced, another big issue in Texas that you would think is more homogenous than it is based on the way our congressional delegation acts and how our state government acts is gun control. But next slide, please. When you look at the numbers of what Texans actually want, the majority of Texans actually do want more strict gun laws when you look at overall voters, not split up by party, but just Texas as a whole. And we've seen that at a state level, I know we're talking about congressional redistricting, but on a state level, of course, right after these polls were taken, in the following leg session, our governor and legislature made it easier to just carry guns around without a permit, the opposite of what voters want. On a federal level, after one of the mass shootings, our Senator John Cornyn helped work on a set of modest gun law reforms that included a red flag law, and he faced a huge amount of backlash for it and is now probably no longer supporting that position because of the way that the state is set up. The pressure in the congressional delegation is to push things more to the extreme. So these were just a couple of concrete examples of how the policies we want don't get done because of gerrymandering. It's very real, it's very concrete, and it's probably need to fix. I'm going to hand it over now to Emily for the next section.
Thanks so much, Nikki. All right, there's a lot of upsetting, hopeless stuff in here, but here's the good news. 311 of y'all are on here on a Tuesday night to learn how to fight this, and I am growing more cynical each day, but the one thing I still definitely believe in is people power, particularly the power of Texans. So we're going to talk about what you can actually do, and the great news is there's a bunch of opportunities for you to make your voice heard. There's in-person testimony opportunities. If you don't feel comfortable with that, there's virtual testimony opportunities. If you don't feel comfortable with that, there's written testimony opportunities. Whatever your comfort level is, there's a sliding scale, and you'll be able to tell the legislature exactly how you feel about this. So we'll talk a little bit about testimony now. I'll kind of do like verbal testimony, but you can apply these principles to written testimony too. It's one of the most effective and direct ways for people to participate in the legislative process. They do have to sit there and listen to you. Sometimes they'll like go like eat a salad or something while you're talking, which is annoying, but at least a quorum of them, like a majority of the committee has to, be somewhere around nearby and listen to you talk. So I know testimony can be really intimidating, and I want to, as much as I can, let y'all know those people work for you. Those representatives sitting on and senators sitting on those panels, they work for you. Without you, they don't have a job. And they need to come in and listen to what you're saying. It's a helpline, right? And I understand it can be scary, but I want you to remember that you are the boss of them. And so when you go in there, of course, being polite and respectful, but you have every right to be there telling them how you feel about your community, redistricting, gerrymandering, and the maps you want to see in the future. So when you go into testimony, I always take notes. I'm a notes person. There are people who can just like do it off the dome, like amazing extemporaneous speakers. I would love to be them when I grow up. But when you write your notes, you'll want to start, they'll say, most likely they'll say, are you, next we're calling Emily E.B. French. They'll call me to the front. Well, they'll probably say Ebby because they love to mispronounce. But they'll call you to the front. They'll say, are you Emily Ebby French? Perfect time to pronounce your own name correctly, so they have it, and say, hi, I'm Emily E.B. French, and they say, begin your testimony. So start your name. If you're with an organization or a group, you can say that, but you don't have to. You don't have to have a job at all to talk to these people. They still work for you. Greet the committee, thanks for having me, yada, yada. And then share your neighborhood and your congressional district. I've got a link in the materials, and I'll try to drop it in the chat at the end, where you can look up your congressional district. But if you just Google what's my congressional district, you can find that. It can be kind of confusing with like your state house district, your state senate district, and your U.S. congressional district, but we just have to worry about U.S. congressional for the purposes of this redistricting, because that's the only thing so far that they've said they're going to redraw. Then you voice your concerns. Talk about all the things we've talked about on this call, right? There's not enough transparency. This process is rushed. Texas has a history of racial discrimination. The maps are still being sued upon for racial discrimination that so many knowledgeable folks have talked about in the chat. I'm so impressed. This is a very smart chat. You can share your personal story and reasons for your position. I lived in Houston. I'm in Austin now. I lived in Houston during the freeze. And there were people, my family members lived all across Houston. I think we had 5 different Congress members across 7 folks living in the same city. It was wild, and I didn't know who to call to go over to my grandmother's house to check and make sure she was okay during the freeze, because I didn't know if we had the same representative or not. That kind of like actual gerrymandering stuff that really impacts your life, that can impact the worst day of your life. Those kinds of personal stories are always going to be really effective. You can say, we would like more time for the court case to conclude, things we've talked about already. Ask for more districts to be drawn that benefit communities of color, not less, because as we've seen, communities of color are way underrepresented in the U.S. Congress, especially as Texas is concerned. And then thank the committee for their time, and then they might ask questions. it is very, unfortunately, I have a lot of respect for a lot of members of the legislature, and then others are also there. But it is very important while you're testifying to give them respect and like be polite. And, it can feel, I'm sure, very, very good to yell at them, but it also is not worth it in my experience to yell at them because sometimes they will remove you or ban you or get mad at you. And none of those things help us move the message along. If they ask you questions, it's unlikely in a redistricting hearing. It's possible, but generally, if you're ever testifying at the ledge and they ask you questions, sometimes, when somebody folds a ping pong table up and they just play like one man ping pong by themselves, sometimes it can feel like you're the table and they're just trying to like ping pong their talking points off of your face and you do not agree with them. You can just say no. You could just say, I don't know. You can just say that doesn't sound right to me, but I'd have to look it up. You do not have to answer their questions if you don't want to. Of course, be nice, be truthful, et cetera, et cetera. But, if you start to feel like they're ping ponging their talking points off of your face, you can back off. You can fold the table back down and decline to answer any of their questions. I'm gonna hand it back to Steph real quick.
Okay, so I have some other questions for you guys to consider. And this kind of references back to what Nikki was talking about. So this is a part of the testimony that talks about current congressional level policies that might be impacting you. So how have federal laws impacted you, your family, your community? So the big, ugly, destructive bill, as what Reverend Barber likes to call it from the Poor People's Campaign. Maybe this has jeopardized your access to afford healthcare. Maybe you're going to be kicked off the Medicaid rolls. Maybe your community, maybe you live in Harris County where there is a large percentage of uninsured people and the local county hospitals are having a hard time providing healthcare to everyone in the county who's uninsured. Stuff like this is very relevant talking points to include in testimony. Maybe this has impacted you, or maybe right now you're having a hard time putting food on the table. Maybe the tax bill is going to jeopardize your ability to get SNAP benefits. That would also be something to talk about. Something that would be up to, we want to just advise caution on. You are more than welcome to talk about immigration. I just want to be sure that everyone is aware of what that might mean. So just be careful. I don't want anyone here being intimidated by ICE or anything like that in the future. But if you are confident and willing, then that is another area that you can talk about. Other federal policies that you might be like top of mind right now are the DOGE cuts. I know in Fort Bend County, for example, there is a large nonprofit there that gets Head Start funding, and they have expanded childcare to the Fort Bend area now because of it. But that new expansion it could be jeopardized if the DOGE committee is left intact and continues to make cuts. Do you have parents that rely on Social Security? I do. My mom talks to me about it every day, very upset, saying they better not come after my Social Security. So that is something that you can also talk about. Maybe they're having a hard time getting into the Social Security office because of all of the employee cuts that DOGE has enacted. Another one that's very top of mind right now for Texas is weather prediction services and FEMA, especially with the floods. I know there's a lot of questions and uncertainty about whether or not we had accurate predictions on the ground in Kerr County when the flood came through. So that would be something to talk about. Disaster relief or FEMA, again, for the Kerr County floods and also for Harris County. I know Harris County is continuously struggling with one hurricane or flooding event after another, and FEMA is very important for funding for the flood recovery in Harris County. So that would be something else to consider including. The last one that's top of mind for me is PBS and NPR. They've just had cuts, I think just last week. Maybe your little one sits there and watches PBS in the afternoon, right? Maybe they watch Sesame Street or whatever it might be. Maybe you rely on that for your unbiased news source like me. So you are able to talk about that as well. Disaster recovery, I think I've mentioned that already. And I think that should be it. All right. Emily, back to you.
Thank you. A little more specifics about this testimony. We know that they're going to give us 2 minutes apiece. That's great, right? They're redrawing our maps out of cycle, and we each get to talk about it if we sign up and haul down there for 2 minutes apiece. 2 minutes is generally 250 to 350 words. You probably know about how fast you talk. And so you can gauge it, but when you practice your testimony, you'll be able to time it and see. While you're talking, they may have a beeper. It'll do a yellow light when I think there's a minute or 30 seconds left. But the yellow light will beep once, doesn't mean you have to stop. Keep talking through that first beep, and then there'll be a red light and a repeated beep. Probably. There'll be some sort of timer on those 2 minutes. You can finish your thought when you get to the end. Don't worry about rushing through, but they probably will cut you off right about at 2 minutes. Prepare what you want to say. We'll talk a little bit about that in a second. And practice. Like I said, you can absolutely go in there and speak it off the dome. If you're like a natural born preacher, I can't wait to watch you testify. I always have to read it off of a piece of paper. I prefer paper. You can do your phone, you can do your laptop. If you're testifying virtually, obviously you have your whole home at your disposal. Lots of logistical unknowns for these hearings. Some of them will be in unfamiliar places. The Austin one will be at the Capitol, but we are going to be there. Many folks are involved in this, and we'll all be able to help each other. If there's an iPad you sign up to testify on, Mary's going to talk about some of those statistics in a second, but we promise we'll be there to help you. There will be Signal chats you can join if you use Signal. But in general, if you're looking for help, we're going to be there to provide it. You can sort of, I hate to encourage anyone to be lemmings, but you can kind of be a lemming a little bit and follow what other folks are doing. And you can submit written comment starting right now. The written comment House portal is open, tinyurl.com/house written comment. That'll stay open probably until the hearings are done. But it never hurts to get your comments in soon if you've decided you don't want to testify in person, or if you want to do both. No law against doing both. Next slide, please. All right, so key talking points. We've already talked about some of these, and y'all will get all these materials after our noon to 1 presentation of this tomorrow. But here are some of the things you can talk about in your testimony. Redistricting, this is a misplaced priority. Greg Abbott's calling everyone back to draw new lines around our communities to crack political power of Black and Brown communities while there is still an active natural disaster. Folks are still recovering in the Hill Country. Greg Abbott said you got to come back for flood relief, and yet these redistricting hearings are like speed tracked, and we have not seen that relief speed tracked the same way. Sorry. Texas just redrew maps in 2021. Doing it again is not normal. As we've said, long history of passing discriminatory election laws, racial gerrymander maps here in Texas. This is just continuing that pattern. Communities of color being intentionally split up. A deeply flawed process, rushed, limited notice, limited opportunity for public input, no proposed maps available. You can talk about the communities where they're not going. They're only going to Houston, DFW, and Austin. This is ridiculous. It's just like, that they're only going to places that like a New Yorker would understand about Texas. These people live in Texas. They know we have West Texas, East Texas, Panhandle. They know the RGV is going to be a huge target that they're going to split up, and there's not even going there. It's so cowardly. Also, partisan gerrymandering may be legal, but it's not right. Just because they can rig it so Republicans can win, or Democrats, theoretically, just so they can rig it so one party can win doesn't mean that that's fair to Texans. Independent redistricting commissions offer a transparent way to draw maps that reflect true diversity and needs of our communities. There are plenty of states that do it. It's feasible. They just don't want to give up that power. Next slide. And more of these talking points can be found on this website, which I will let Steph Swanson tell you about.
And I'm going to stop sharing so that you can take over.
Okay, guys, I'm going to make you guys look at the website. I spent today updating it, so I'd like for everyone to look at it. Hold on just 1 second. On the front page, we have some of the basics now on the landing page. So we have a section for latest updates on mid-census redistricting. We also have our Fair and Open campaign, which I'm going to be covering in just a second. And then there's just other ways to get involved. Okay, so at the top, you see our menu bar. Our advocacy blog is where I'm going to be posting all of our updates that I share out via the newsletter. There are extra tidbits in here as well, like this yesterday. In fact, we sent another letter to the House and Senate redistricting committees complaining about the rules that they have adopted for the upcoming session. You can read that letter that we sent there. And on that note, oh, and by the way, I've also listed out all of the hearings that they're going to be holding right now. At the House, as you know, we've been talking about this, are holding 3 hearings. Just so folks know, those hearings are going to be limited to public testimony for only 5 hours. So that's something to complain about in your testimony. And then the Senate filled hearings are going to be 4 of them. And I've linked all of the hearing notices for these hearings. So it's just an easy way to find them in case you have a hard time using the Texas Legislators website. Okay, I'm going to go to the Fair and Open campaign next. Actually, let's go to the Fair and Open campaign. So the Fair and Open campaign was actually one of the major campaigns that we had back in the 2021 round of redistricting. We have picked it up, we have dusted it off, and I'm going to present these ideas to you today. So I want you guys to think about, number one, Texas does have like this long history of discrimination and the redistricting process. And the 2011 round of redistricting, the courts actually complained about how closed off the process was from the public. The judges on that federal panel said that they complained the state did not have maps to show the public. They passed the maps out of committee without taking public testimony on them. So I have included some of the quotes from those judges up here, but troubling to us is that the legislator is continuing on with this pattern of discrimination that the court has already called out as troublesome, right? So for this 2025 mid-census redistricting, they've already decided to hold field hearings, but there's no maps visible for the public, right? Has anyone seen what their district map proposal is? So again, the question is, why are they holding these field hearings if they're not going to allow the folks to comment on the maps? That's something to call out very aggressively in testimony, in my opinion. This is unacceptable for them to be holding these hearings without having maps present. Not only that, but they are rapidly holding these hearings without giving the public much notice about them. 3 days notice is not much time to go out and notify other organizations in the community about these hearings. And I already mentioned as well that the House has limited testimony to only 5 hours per hearing for public comment. That's not right. We are constituents. We have the right to be heard by our elected representatives. That's right there, right? In the Constitution. That's one of our constitutional rights. So it's very upsetting when they're trying to close off public comment. That is very, very discouraging. And that's stuff that we can talk about in our testimony. I'm not going to play the videos. I'm afraid they're not going to come out very well. But if you want to get ideas for what this looks like, we had a whole bunch of people in 2021 come out and provide testimony and uplift these talking points. And these videos really do feature a lot of really good ideas on how to incorporate them. Okay, so the new talking points for the Fair and Open campaign that, like I said, we dusted off today. I've outlined them here on the website. So we want them to show us the maps. We want them to not discriminate against voters of color. This brazen move by the governor and the DOJ to increase Republican representation in the US House by taking it away from communities of color is shameful. It is blatant racial discrimination. As much as you can say racial discrimination, because it is, they're going to come in and intentionally dismantle majority minority districts. This is intentional discrimination, despite what they might be claiming. Do not limit public testimony, right? We don't want them to cut us off. We don't want them to limit it to only 5 hours. Again, we are constituents, our voices matter, they should listen to us. We need at least 5 days to review the maps. Right now, we don't have maps. As soon as they do show the maps, post the maps, we need at least 5 days to review them to make sure that they uphold the Voting Rights Act and federal laws. And that analysis can be very detailed and very lengthy. So 5 days notice minimum should be a requirement. We also need at least 5 days to review any proposed changes to the maps, again, for the same reasons that I just listed. We also want them to provide an analysis of how the new maps impact historically disenfranchised communities of color. The bill analysis for any map proposal must include an analysis of how the proposed map affects the ability of communities of color and VRA protected language minorities to elect a candidate of their choice. And then the last part is we want them to keep all documents, written communications, emails, text messages, and draft maps. This comes in light of the chair of the Senate Redistricting Committee taking part in a panel discussion with Cleta Mitchell, and they are instructing legislators who attended that conference to delete their emails, to destroy their records for this redistricting process, to purposely hide it from the public. I don't know what to say to them. This is government. Government works best when it's open, when it's transparent. So we want to call this out and we want to put pressure on them not to destroy public records. Okay, so that's the Fair and Open campaign. If you're having a hard time coming up with some of that more personal testimony, if you want to come up and just read off the Fair and Open campaign, that's also a very useful thing to do. It would count for helping us create that record for sure. The last thing I wanted to show you guys is on the public input hearings tab at the top. I have the hearing dates. I've also included testimony guides. So we have messaging on mid-census redistricting. So if you guys literally want to come and pull some of these bullets to include in your testimony, you're more than welcome to do that. I have example testimony. If you're again struggling, you're not quite sure what to write. This was based off of Joaquin Gonzalez's testimony. Joaquin was a staff attorney with the Texas Civil Rights Project back in 2021. So I've updated his old testimony draft to make it more timely and relevant for today's issues. So there's an example there. He also has included some more ideas for testimony in this third bullet point down. And this fourth one you can just disregard for now. It's based on communities of interest, and we haven't touched on that tonight. I'm also going to be putting the presentations up here. So the slide decks for all of these for this presentation tonight, and then the recording will go up on the website as well. Okay.
Perfect. Thank you for that, Steph. We have just a few more slides. We're going to get into some more of the hearing logistics. Getting the screen back up.
Yes, and this is my last slide, and then I'll stop talking. But real quick, we also made a redistricting Mad Lib with some of our suggestions for testimony. You guys have to promise me that if you use this, you will change it because they can't hear the same testimony like 600 times before they notice. But if you want to fill in some of that stuff and use it to get you started, that could be a good starting place. And now it's Mary's turn. Yay!
Hey y'all. So we have a total of 7 hearings so far. It was 3 up until noon today or earlier this afternoon. So bear with us. We are catching up. I did spend a lot of time going over the hearing notices for both the House and the Senate. And they are different, and the rules are different on how they're regulating it, because the House and Senate, even though they work in the same building, they like to operate separately to a fault. So for the House hearings, and I also do want to mention, you should definitely feel free to give your testimony twice to both the redistricting committee on the House side and the redistricting committee in the Senate side. if you already have it written out and you're ready, there's opportunities to, to say your piece twice. And I highly recommend both chambers really need to hear community input. So House, just a quick review. There is going to be a hearing on Thursday in Austin. That hearing will have a virtual testimony option available. And I'll get into that in a little bit. There is a Houston hearing on Saturday at the University of Houston. And there is a hearing at UTA on Monday in Arlington. These QR codes that are up here, if you register and let us know that you're going to be there, we will make sure to send you all of the details and all of the links that you need. And if you want to join, we have a chat for folks. If like folks are going to be there in person, and we'll make sure to like keep you posted on like, any changes. If you sign up for those and let us know that you're going, we'll make sure that we will contact you and let you know, where we're congregating. Also, all of these hearings, we're planning rallies ahead of them. And so there will also be rallies for each of these hearings. You want to go to the next slide? Just a little bit more details, and all of this will also be sending out, so don't worry about trying to memorize all this text. Like I mentioned before, Austin, Houston, and Arlington all are offering in-person testimony. Austin specifically is they're going to have a virtual option as well. Just be mindful, they're only 5 hours, so you may not be able, if you lean towards virtual or in person, there is a risk of not being able to have your voice heard. But for all of these hearings, there is public comment available. For the House hearings, public comment will close when the hearing ends, when the hearing is adjourned. So you'll be able to submit your written testimony if you aren't able to give it in person, or if you want to continue to tell people about how they can get involved and they're better off submitting something virtually, they can do that as well. We can go to the next slide. All right, so for the Senate hearings, this is just what we got word of today. So there will be Senate field hearings Friday, Saturday, Monday, and Tuesday. They are technically being held at the Capitol, except they are only accepting virtual testimony. And then for registering for those hearings, you can register starting now, and it closes 12 hours before each hearing. So once again, we'll send all of the details, and we will have a mobilize as well for this. We're catching up on trying to update all this information, where we can send details about, reminding you guys when the deadline to register for the virtual hearings are. They did also note on the posting, we can go to the next slide. They did also note in the posting that like if you aren't able to testify at one hearing, you can register to testify for a future one. So if you have a go at it for like multiple days, or tell more people like, hey, I just testified, you can testify tomorrow or on Monday or on Tuesday. That registration will close 12 hours before, but there's always an opportunity to join future ones. And yeah, there's a link to register. And then the difference for the Senate and the House as far as public comment, they're going to leave public comment open the entire time that the redistricting process is happening. And that's something that's different in that the Senate never has public comment traditionally during regular session. The House, if there is a committee hearing going on, there will be public comment open for that. But the Senate typically doesn't take online comments, but they mentioned that they will keep this open. throughout the entire process. And I did want to mention that even though they are technically regional hearings, if you live in South Texas and you can only attend Monday, then sign up for Monday. Don't feel like you're limited to attending that specific day. Um, Really, we just want to make sure that you guys know of all of the opportunities to be able to submit public comment and have this direct feedback with the legislators that are controlling this process. But yeah, I think that's kind of what I wanted to make sure to cover. Is it is a little bit complicated on the differences between the two chambers and how they're handling their hearings. But we're here to help you and make sure that we all cross the T's and dot our I's so that everybody here can participate. And that's all I had.
Thanks, Mary. Okay, so just for our last slide before getting into Q&A, we just want to go over some ways that you can also take action from home. I know that we just went over one of them, which is actually testifying to the Senate hearings. I think the big thing here is that that is great and important, but there's also more things that you can do. And so really focusing on the fact of just calling and emailing your reps. So for all the reasons Emily went over in the key takeaways and talking point sections of just letting them know that this process as a whole is being rushed, is going to be discriminatory, and just asking that they do everything within their power to oppose it, to fight it, to delay, to whatever they can, to not let not to let this process just go, without a fight. So that's the number one thing. Emily also had a link to find your rep, so we can drop those in the email that we send after. If you don't already know, but definitely be calling both your House member as well as the Senate. Additionally, also asking that you contact your local officials and congressional. I think a lot of them are already paying attention since it's their seats that are being, potentially redrawn. But even your local county commissioners, your city council, just anyone who can speak out about this is important. They all work together. It all matters, and they all have an impact on our lives and in our communities. And so making sure that they use their voices and their platforms to speak out, to testify on behalf of their community, things like that is important. So definitely reach out to them as well. And then lastly, this has also been mentioned, but there is the online public comments portal. I believe this goes to an action kit. It might not, so sorry if it doesn't, the QR code, in which we will have the links for both of those. And if not, we will send them afterwards. So just to recap, the number one ask is to come in person to the first House hearings in Austin, Dallas, and Houston. There'll be a rally beforehand, and then actually asking people to stay, whether or not you're testifying, just stay, make sure we fill those chambers. I think they're promoting to wear a white shirt just so that we all are wearing some color that matches. And then secondly, call your reps, both from your local all the way up to your state and congressional reps, ask them to speak out. And then lastly, submit online public comments. I know there was a great question in the chat about even if I'm calling and emailing all of our state officials, should I still submit online public comments? And the answer is yes. I think it's really important, and the lawyers on the call will tell you so, to just get your opinion and your argument and your reasons for keeping your community together into the public record, and the online public comments portal is going to be the way to do that. So I think we are ready for Q&A now. And I also, forgive me, but I'm going to stop screen sharing because I have lost the Zoom somehow. So I'm going to stop for a second, and then we're going to pivot into questions.
If you do have a question, it might be easier to raise your hand and then you can come off mute as we call folks. And before we continue really quick, I forgot to list one very important organization that's in the Fair Maps Texas Coalition that's on the call tonight, and I apologize. It's Texans Against Gerrymandering. Lydia Zuno is here, their president. So I'm so sorry about that, Lydia.
Thank you, Steph. Yeah, and we will get that updated before the presentation tomorrow. Is there any questions for some of our helpers that were monitoring the chat that were not answered?
Yeah. Someone go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna point out some of the questions that I put on the parking lot. Some folks are asking if they can have maps for the rallies especially the ones on college campuses, since they're larger campuses?
So what I'll share there, so for the Austin rally, which is happening Thursday, that one is going to be on the south steps of the Capitol. That is the one that is most confirmed and set. We are operating in a time crunch with all of this as we just got these official notices on Monday. And so for Houston and Arlington, they are still working on securing an actual location. There's different laws with universities or policies with the policies or with the campuses themselves. And so those exact locations have not been set. But what we're asking is you go ahead and RSVP if you want to get that information. And as soon as that information is set, we will be updating the Mobilize first. And then secondly, ahead of any of the events, we are going to send out additional information on all that we can imagine that you would need to know. So for rallies, if we can try to provide, the maps, the locations, concrete addresses, things like that, just helpful tips like dress for this hot heat, hydrate, things like that. We'll try to give you all the information you can. And then for the actual hearings, same thing. We'll make sure that we let you know the reminders of like registration is going to open an hour before for the in-person hearings. Tips for just like bringing a jacket. It gets cold in some of these buildings, stuff like that. So we will try to prepare you with all the information. We just might not be there yet, but we will get that over email. Yes. And then I will pause for the next one.
Awesome. Okay, so we also have somebody asking, once there are maps proposed, will there be another opportunity to testify at the Capitol? Or I guess at any of the 3 hearings, if there will be any more hearings after maps are introduced.
We are hoping that they will allow testimony in the committee for both the House and the Senate. We just have to wait and see. And that's why it's super important now to ask for that demand when you attend the field hearing and call them out. And that will help push them to do the right thing and kind of hold them accountable. It's not right for them to hold these field hearings without showing us the maps first. So please comment on that. Like I said, ask them to hold a committee hearing allowing public testimony after the maps have been released.
Awesome. Okay, next question is, if they're limiting the amount of speakers, should we push the strong speakers and stories?
I can jump in here, which is I think among the groups that are organizing and kind of know people who do have these strong stories or just arguments to make, we are encouraging that they sign up first. So we're telling people that if you know someone that has a really great story to tell, we are also telling that I would encourage you to tell them to be there early, sign up early. Because the one thing that we cannot control is the order in which they go. We hope that they will start with the first signups all the way through the end, but we don't know if that's going to be the case. And so maybe if you're someone who wants to testify but isn't sure, maybe don't be the first one to sign up. like wait an hour or so, or right before the hearing starts, something like that, I think is the best advice we can give at the moment.
There are a few more questions. I don't know if we want to take questions from folks who have their hands raised. I believe the first person who I saw was Charlene.
Yes. Hello, everybody. Thank you for a great presentation and all of the rich information. I'd like to know if you could make a placard or a face card available that we could add the Mobilize link to, and for the sake of consistency, post it on our social media platforms so that we can invite people or inform people so that they'll know about it. My concern is that I got it through a newsletter e-blast, but others may not get it in time.
Yes. Are you wanting one that would be, for example, like have all of the cities all in one?
I think if we could get them to mobilize would be good, but I'd like to have an image that is consistent to all of your PowerPoint information. So you may have the stars with the dates and then a link to click, or I'm not sure what you want to do, but I'm thinking if we just post something individually, people may overlook it, but if there's a continuity to the face card that's being posted on social media, perhaps we can also draw attention to the event, like maybe something saying urgent, immediate response or action required or call to action, something like that, and then use the graphic that you have, one of the graphics that you have for your PowerPoint.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. We do have some that we're beginning to circulate. I think especially for the rally, in which we're also like trying for the in-person ones. We don't have one yet for the virtual hearings. I think that is something that we will prioritize and get as soon as possible.
Okay, would you put it on your website, maybe under that tab where all of the information is, so we could pull it down from there?
Yes, we can do that for sure.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your time tonight and the information.
Thank you.
Amazing. I think the next person who raised their hand was Pat Jackson.
Thank you so much. And thank y'all for the presentation. This has been awesome. I just have a question just for clarity. So if people want to do a written communication, because I want to engage even some of our elderly people who may not be able to get out or rally and things like that, who are we contacting? Are we contacting United States senators or Texas legislators? I'm confused.
It's confusing. We're contacting Texas legislators to redraw the lines of United States House members, but we'll be talking to our state because they get to draw the US lines for some reason.
I can also put this information up on the hearing portion of the website so folks know who they need to contact. Specifically on the House side and the Senate side, they have their own subcommittees that are going to be working on redistricting. So number one, you always want to contact your state rep and your state senator that represents you to express your opinion on this matter, but then you also can contact the committee members as well. And I will put all of this information on the website. As Emily just stated, the Texas legislator is responsible for drawing the district maps for US Congress. And so that's why we are having to navigate the Texas legislator for this. Does anyone know who was next? Was it Kira?
I believe it was Deborah, but yes, I think it was Deborah.
Hi, Debbie. It's good to see you.
Good to see you too, Stephanie. We keep doing this. State Representative Chris Turner has a thing, and I put it on the in the chat that for the UTA, it's going to be at Hereford Center, the community center, and it's going to be in the Rosebud Theater. That's where everything is going to happen. And I put the flyer in the chat. It has the address and everything.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Good work, ladies.
Thank you so much. Yes, that is where the hearing's taking place, and the rally, we're looking to have it somewhere right near there, hopefully.
Awesome. Okay, I think Kira's up in the queue next.
Hello, my name is Kyra Newton. I am a high school advocate and the executive director and co-founder for my own grassroots organization called Beyond Boundaries, where we promote civic engagement and education for youth. We're in the process of getting transportation for high school students to go to the Capitol and testify for this hearing. So my question, I have a few questions, sorry, but my first question is, what advice do you have for first-time testifiers, especially high school students, to make their testimony most impactful in 1 to 2 minutes?
Oh my goodness. Well, first of all, like amazing. Congrats. I wish I was doing stuff like this in high school, but I don't know what I was doing. So first of all, that's incredible. I think I will definitely want to hear from everyone else, but it wasn't that long ago I remember testifying for the first time. And I think the biggest advice I have is just to lean into your own story. Don't worry too much about saying the right thing or like the legal aspects of it all. Like you're in high school, you have a lot of life to live before and a lot of books to read to like to get to probably the legal side of things. So I wouldn't like get caught up on that. And if you do know it, great, that's perfect. But if not, really focus on your own story, your own community, and getting that into the record, and how this could impact you and the people you love and your school and everything like that. Secondly, I would say to just know that they might ask you questions. That's one thing that also throws people off guard sometimes is they ask questions and you might feel nervous. Just again, stick to what you know. If you don't know an answer, don't worry about answering it. Tell them that you can get back to them or that you just don't have the answer. But I'll pass it to anyone else if they have additional tips.
Legislators really love when students come, to be honest with you. Everyone like stops what they're doing, they come back to their seats and they love to listen to y'all's testimony. So everything that Amber just said to make it more impactful and tell a story that's something personal from your heart is what they'll really buy into. And thank you for doing all of this. This is so wonderful.
Thank you so much. I know that usually like during the legislative session, they usually do have a priority way to ensure that students are not left out during, for time constraints. Do you think they'll be doing that during this hearing as well?
I would love to say yes, but my faith in the Texas legislature and their processes has dwindled very much so over the years. So I think, especially given the fact that they're doing this within a 30-day special session, I don't know that they will prioritize that. But you know what you could do is reach out to the committee and ask that they do that. So that's something that tonight, tomorrow, if you want to go ahead and email them, I think someone dropped it in the chat. That would be a great thing to ask for.
Okay, thank you so much. And my last question is, do we have any indication of when the redistricting committee will actually start if the House goes into recess? And how can the public be alerted in real time if the schedule shifts suddenly?
Asking all the right questions, first of all, but I'm going to give it this to Emily or Veronica, one of our people on the inside who know the best. Sorry.
So if the question is, what if they make a last minute change? They generally try not to, especially since, I mean, frankly, the optics of this are not great from the outset. Let's be completely frank. But canceling hearings last minute and not allowing folks to actually share their testimony is going to be one of the main critiques of this process, as it should be. So I think they will try to minimize that as much as possible. As for whether they will schedule more hearings at the last minute, like after they push out maps toward the end of the process, I think that's unfortunately likely because it gives folks less opportunity to take part in the process. But that is something to be very vocal about and something that we will be banging on desks about at the Capitol as well. Did I miss anything, friends?
I was going to say you can sign up for email alerts when the committee posts a notice or something, and I will drop that link in the chat as well. Good questions.
Very important proviso. Thank you so much, Emily.
Marlisa, do you know who was next? Carmela, maybe?
Yes. I think Jessica. I believe they show up in order. I really hope so.
All right, let's go Jessica then.
Can y'all hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I must admit, I think I'm a bit out of my league with everything that y'all are talking about. I'm ignorant in politics, but I do see what's going on in Texas, and I want to make sure that my voice is heard and that everyone's treated equally, and I feel like it's leaning the other way. So I might ask a question that's not directly towards what y'all have been talking about because I feel a little bit intimidated by everything that y'all were talking about. I want to be involved and I want to help Texas and help us get our voices heard better, but I'm not educated, knowledgeable enough of what's going on. Would y'all have any recommendations so I can know what to do? I don't even know if I even asked that question correctly. I'm
You
sorry.
did great. You did great. First of all, I mean, seriously, you're not underqualified. I'm a lawyer and I don't understand what's going on with redistricting. But if you know it's unfair and you know that you want people to speak up, you're already there. I mean, truly, like reading the redistricting Wikipedia page, like looking at there are book, you can like get a book from the library, whatever. But like you're here on this call. You've already learned a lot from my very smart friends on the call with us. So I think you're doing a great job. I don't have any specific recs, but other than to like, believe in yourself. You're doing great. I think it's a really complicated topic, but I mean, if you know it's unfair and you know it's disadvantaged communities of color, you're already there to where you need to be to testify.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, sorry, Jessica. I was just going to add on to say, like, I feel this all the time, and I am doing this every day pretty much. So I get all of my 5 best friends together who know a lot more than me and ask them to present on the things. So I'm
Right.
with you. I understand. We will, like Emily said, we will also share kind of different versions of the resources. So we have this long presentation, which I know it was a lot of information, but we also do have a one pager that kind of just breaks it down into that need to know information that we will share. And I think that if you just want to like look deeper into it, well, maybe not even that. I would just like trust your instincts more than anything. Like they are right. Like you don't have to know everything to have an opinion on something. That was some of the best advice I've ever been given. And I think just like leaning into that and just like you can, even if you want to submit public comments, it can be as simple as like I oppose what you are doing. You
Okay.
don't have
Yeah.
to form a whole argument. I think that's the big thing to know is sometimes it's as simple as just putting the words on paper of like I don't like that you're doing this.
Okay. And I know it in they say get a hold of your state representatives and your senators. And I don't know enough, but I Googled my state, like I kind of feel a little bit intimidated on who exactly I should be contacting. And
Yeah, I would
uh,
say don't worry about calling them, especially you're just starting. I'm don't put the pressure of getting on a phone and having the right thing to say. Like just do the online stuff first as you're reading,
okay.
you're learning, like just literally send the emails, do the public comments. And
Okay.
I think that like
Okay.
that showing up or showing up to the rallies, like things like that, if you can, you might not be in an area that has it. Like that is beyond enough. That is more than the average person does. And so don't like feel pressure to do it all. I think like as everyone has said in the chat, like you're doing it perfectly. And when redistricting comes back in 5 years, you're already a step ahead of the game. So
Yeah. Okay. I appreciate everyone in this group. I appreciate what y'all are doing. Thank you, ladies.
thank you. Okay, and then I think it was Carmela next.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for what you're doing and standing. I love the fact that we're all standing in solidarity. And, this is the perfect time for us to really mobilize in a way that will move the needle the way that we need to. We just don't know, of course, what the outcome is going to be, but we're all hopeful that they will not do what is just unnecessary. It's just all unnecessary. But the question that I have is, can we, number one, make comments about the fact that they are breaking the law? Because I think it's every 10 years that the maps are supposed to be drawn, but we're in 5. That's the first question. And the second question is, we do, and Jessica, this is to your point, I don't know if you're still on the call, but would you all be opposed to, or would you be open rather, I should say, to a link that I can send for kind of like a one-on-one overview? It's an explanation on redistricting through our Houston Area Urban League website. Would you be open can I put that in the chat? And are you open to that? That's the second question.
Yes, I'm more than happy to, if you guys have other redistricting resources that you found helpful, if you want to send them to our website, I'm more than happy to send them out in our email communications for sure.
So
Okay.
to your first question, sorry, this is an annoying lawyer answer, but I have to give the lawyer answer. So in the Texas Constitution and the federal Constitution, the legislature is explicitly required to redraw the maps every 10 years, right? Unfortunately, unfortunately, the Supreme Court has ruled that that doesn't prohibit them from doing it more often. So just because they're required to do something every 10 years doesn't mean that they aren't allowed to do it more often. And it's very confusing and annoying, but that's the long and short of it.
Appreciate that.
I was just going to quickly add that just as an argumentative point, like I think one thing that we're leaning into is just because it's legal doesn't mean it's moral. And so I think, like, just leaning into that if versus trying to make the argument that it's not legal, I guess.
Yeah, if there's if you need a catchphrase, the law is a floor, not a ceiling, right? The law is the bare minimum, and Texans deserve more than the bare minimum.
Thank you, Carmela. Do you have any other questions? You may be muted if you're talking, but I think let's go ahead and move it on to Lorenda because we are getting close to time. Oh no. I think I lost her. What about Erin?
Oh, no, this is Lorenda. Yes,
Okay.
I'm here. Hi. My question, I'm so glad I found you all because I really wanted to be proactive in really coming down on the committee, but I want to do it in an effort of a group. So I want to know, I already asked if there was some work going on as far as in the Texas, and Lydia is going to get with me about that. But I would like to use our own, I was going to contact the committee to get the actual census that has justified a special meeting, number one. And then two, use that and do our own mapping. That way, when I do testify and give my testimony, I can be proactive and give them something that's a suggestion, because being speculative and what we think they're going to do is not very helpful, especially when we as the people should be able to provide some insight to them and some suggestions, not only in what's going to hurt us, but in ways that is going to help everybody, because it's I haven't seen anything that justify what they're doing. So instead of fighting the air, I would love to be proactive. So if anybody is doing that already, proposing and using a software to propose a map, and also contacting the committee to demand that they give us when the maps will be available, give them an alternative solution, and also when would there be a hearing, voting, and information that comes out for once they do decide that this is going to be the maps they're going to draw. Thank you for your time. I look forward to connecting.
Making space for anyone else first, but no, yes, absolutely on the proposals. When I first testified on redistricting in 2021, I like zoomed in on my community and where they drew the lines through my college campus, which was super diverse, and I submitted that. So it's like you can give them stuff, absolutely. Steph, I think you came off mute.
I did. I just want to remind folks, though, as well, that there's ongoing litigation right now over the 2021 maps. There have already been maps proposed by those attorneys and civil rights organizations. And so just also keep that in mind, that if you don't have the capacity to make your own map, you can say you want the court to finish, weighing in on the lawsuit, and you want a fairer map from that lawsuit, or something like that.
Thank you, Steph. Okay, let's quickly try to get these last few questions, Erin, and if not, feel free to drop them in the chat and we'll try to answer it.
Okay, I can try to go through this relatively quickly. So it's kind of a multiple part question. I know that usually when people go to testify at hearings, it could take all day. I've heard of them taking like 24, 26 hours. So with that in mind, is that something we need to kind of keep in mind when going? If so, kind of brings me into my next part of my question. I was considering doing virtual. So if it's virtual, am I just going to be like hanging around and waiting for them to just let me know? Or should I have like a time that I'm waiting for? And I was expecting to go to Austin, but you guys just said there's actually a virtual one going on in San Antonio, which is where I live. Would that limit me to only testifying in one location? Sorry, I get shaky when I talk in public.
No, Emily put it in the chat, but so usually, yes, that is a real concern. But they proactively have limited testimony to 5 hours. And that in itself is extremely undemocratic. I know none of us want to be there for 24 hours realistically, but if that's how long it takes to get everyone who wants to speak, that's what they should do. And they are not doing that. So I think just first naming that that is not in play this time for these in-person hearings. So you don't have to worry about that, I guess is a good thing. But for the virtual ones, it's been a minute since I've done a virtual hearing. I do think you are waiting around. Does anyone have more insights on that? If you're just like on a Zoom call all day, and do they give any sort of warning?
Sure, I can.
Yeah.
Sure. Based on how virtual hearings went in 2021 and 23 for redistricting, you have to sign up in that time period beforehand. I think it's 24 hours beforehand. You'll get a Zoom link. You can separately watch the hearing on another tab, but they will keep you, I think, waiting in a Zoom room until it's your time to speak. Then they'll suddenly like pull you into the um, the actual like Zoom where you'll be in front of the lawmakers. It's a little bit disconcerting and they don't really tell you what order the speakers are in. Sometimes they do give the courtesy of like while you're waiting in the Zoom, they will put in the chat what the order of the upcoming speakers is so you know what the virtual like lineup is, but they don't like have to and they don't always do that. Does that answer the question?
I've also been at the in Austin testifying, and I know you will have the ones that are in person and then the ones online. So they always, whatever the order is, that's what they usually do. So it's not just everybody that's there that's going to speak, and the people that are virtual just not, that are not speaking.
Thank you for that. Oh, Erin, go ahead. You can finish up if you had another follow-up.
So it was just said that if I were to be essentially waiting in the Zoom meeting, I could probably watch the hearing live elsewhere. Where exactly would that be? And that's my last question.
No, that is a great question. So if you go to the Senate website, because if you're doing virtual, it's going to be the Senate. So go to the Senate website, and I don't know exactly, but there'll be like a broadcast like on tab or something like that. Texas Senate is what you got to look up. Texas Senate live broadcast. I think if you Google that, it'll probably pull up, and you'll just it'll bring you to whatever live broadcast it has that day, because sometimes they have multiple hearings going on. But just look for the one that says congressional redistricting, and that's probably the way it's going to be titled. And yeah, that's exactly right. You just want to have that up playing somewhere. Of course. Okay, Deborah.
Yes, I also put a link for the hearings. It has the location of the hearings, plus it has each one of the committee members that are involved. So it gives you'll see who they are. You can click on them and see what district they represent, what bills they have put before the Senate, and so that's a good way to also contact somebody in addition to your own representatives. And it's in there. The link is in there. You'll see the Capitol building there, and it'll include. You just move it up on and down. It'll give the locations first, but if you move it down, you'll see the committee members.
Thank you. I'm copying all these links for myself, so I'm gonna try to look through and find them all. Okay, is there any final call for a question? We'll do one more if there's any.
I have one question that was thrown in the chat that I think might be important for folks to hear. Somebody asked, are there any topics you think we should avoid discussing that may seem like a good idea but are not super helpful in court?
Please, yes.
So I think one of the things to keep in mind is that they are going to try to hammer that this is only being redrawn for partisan advantage. But what it's actually going to do is cement racial discrimination in these district lines, right? So anything that is emphasizing that this is, just a partisan effort or what have you, isn't as helpful as just talking about how this is going to impact your community and your representation and the representation of communities of color. if that's helpful.
Also want to add that the state's gerrymandered currently, right? We're already wrapped up in litigation in court from 2021. The district lines that we currently have, we don't particularly like, right? But that doesn't mean we want them to come in and disassemble representation. So it might not be best to talk about where district lines fall per se, so much as that you expect more representation for communities of color, and that you want, again, to emphasize that you want the courts to weigh in on the 2021 maps before this process proceeds any further.
All right, Jessica?
Really quickly, this just popped into my head. Should we talk about how they're intermixing the urban and the rural districts together and how they don't have anything together? Just popped in my head. I'm in one of those districts. Should we also maybe talk a little bit about that as well?
Yes, most of the districts that were identified in the Department of Justice, the letter that they sent, those districts are going to most likely be cracked. I don't know if you guys are familiar with what happened in 2021 with Senator Powell's district from the Fort Worth area. She had an opportunity district, a majority minority district in Tarrant County, and the legislator came in and intentionally diluted that district by cracking it. So you had a little bit of Tarrant County included in the district, and then it picked up like 12 rural counties. So that district no longer would elect a candidate of choice for communities of color. So you can very much anticipate on them doing that. Joaquin Gonzalez's testimony guide that's up on the website gives some examples of how to detail that.
But yeah, both of my districts are like that. I'm in Tarrant County, so I'm well aware of all of that.
Okay, it looks like we have, oh, sorry, Amber, you're muted. Looks like we have one more question, and then I think we need to start wrapping up.
Sorry, yes,
Hi.
go ahead.
Sorry, I think it's me, right? Who raised the question?
Yeah.
Okay, so quick question, really quick. So I'm actually in Texas 18th district, so Sylvester Turner's district that hasn't had, obviously he passed away, and we haven't had a Congress person in the seat since his passing. Is that worth bringing up? Because to me, it feels like, I mean, I haven't had a voice in government since that happened. And it certainly feels obviously that this particular district that the governor did not want to call an election sooner because he did not want our district to have a say in what was going on. But I wasn't sure if that was worth bringing up in this discussion, because it also ties into just, I don't know, the governor not calling elections for partisan gain.
That is 100% completely appropriate. Yes, I would talk about that. The whole point is to make sure that you guys get representation, and the fact that he has delayed having a special election for your district is rather insulting. Your district, Congressional District 18, was the House district of Barbara Jordan, one of the first Black women to serve in US Congress, and it has a long history of electing candidates of choice. And that is probably one of the reasons why he didn't call a special election, to be honest with you. So I would definitely talk about that.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay, I know there's probably a million more questions, and I wish that we could probably answer them all, but I think that with all the information that we've shared, you should have pretty much everything that you would need to confidently testify on the matter. And like I said, even if it's not all like landing perfectly right now, we're going to share everything so that you can revisit it. We'll be around to answer questions, things like that if you need. So we will, after tomorrow's webinar, whenever we, which also you're welcome to come to that one too. It's going to be the same material, but definitely if you want to hear it again, by all means, join us again tomorrow at noon. After that, we will We will circulate there, like the live stream link. We'll circulate all of the materials and links that you could possibly need. And then otherwise, we hope to see some of you in person. And even if we don't see you, we hope you're taking virtual actions, and we just appreciate you so much for being plugged in and speaking out. And you know, we're all in this together. So thank y'all.
Thank you, ladies. You're beautiful, and have a good night. Thank you so much.
Uno reverse.
Awesome. Good night.
Have a good night.